Topic 4.5 Market Revolution. I never thought my cotton gin would change history. Eli Whitney, 1765 to 1825. Learning objective. Explain the causes and effects of the innovations in technology, agriculture, and commerce over time. In the early 1800s, the Jeffersonian dream of a nation of independent farmers remained strong in rural areas. Innovations in new technology in the 19th century would steadily decrease the demand for people working in agriculture and increase the demand for people working in commerce. Ironically, Jefferson, a father of a political revolution, would see his ideal nation of small farmers overwhelmed by an economic revolution based on new knowledge. As the 19th century progressed, an increasing percentage of the American people were swept up in the dynamic economic changes of the Industrial Revolution. Political conflicts over tariffs, internal improvements, and the Bank of the United States, see topic 4.3 and 4.8, reflected the importance to people's lives of a national economy that was rapidly growing. Development of the Northwest. The Old Northwest consisted of 6 states that joined the Union before 1860: Ohio, 1803, Indiana, 1816, Illinois, 1818, Michigan, 1837, Wisconsin, 1848, and Minnesota, 1858. These states came from territories formed out of land ceded to the national government in the 1780s by one of the original 13 states. The procedure for turning these territories into states was part of the Northwest Ordinance passed by Congress in 1787. See topic 3.7 and 3.12. In the early years of the 19th century, much of the Old Northwest was unsettled frontier, and the part of it that was settled relied upon the Mississippi to transport grain to southern markets and the port of New Orleans. By the mid-century, however, this region became closely tied to the other northern states by 2 factors. 1. Military campaigns by federal troops that drove American Indians from the land, and 2. The building of canals and railroads that established common markets between the Great Lakes and the East Coast. Agriculture. In the Old Northwest, corn and wheat were very profitable and fed people in growing urban areas. Using the newly invented steel plow by John Deere and mechanical reaper by Cyrus McCormick, a farm family was more efficient and could plant more acres, needing to supplement its labor only with a few hired workers at harvest time. Part of the crop was used to feed cattle and hogs, and also to supply distillers and brewers with grains for making whiskey and beer. Farmers shipped grain quickly to cities to avoid spoilage. Transportation. Vital to the development of both a national and an industrial economy was an efficient network of interconnecting roads and canals for moving people, raw materials, and manufactured goods. Roads. Pennsylvania's Lancaster Turnpike, built in the 1790s, connected Philadelphia with the rich farmlands around Lancaster. Its success stimulated the construction of other privately built and relatively short toll roads that, by the mid-1820s, connected most of the country's major cities. Despite the need for interstate roads, states' rights advocates blocked the spending of federal funds on internal improvements. Construction of highways that crossed state lines was therefore unusual. One notable exception was the National or Cumberland Road, a paved highway and major route to the west extending more than 1,000 miles from Maryland to Illinois. It was begun in 1811 and completed in the 1850s, using both federal and state money, with the different states receiving ownership and segments of the highway. Canals. The completion of the Erie Canal in New York State in 1825 was a major event in linking the economies of western farms and eastern cities. The success of this canal in stimulating economic growth touched off a frenzy of canal building in other states. In little more than a decade, canals joined together all of the major lakes and rivers east of the Mississippi. Improved transportation meant lower food prices in the east, more immigrants settling in the West, and stronger economic ties between the two sections. Steam engines and steamboats. The development of steam power engines in the 18th century revolutionized the location of factories. When factories ran on power of moving water, they had to be located on a stream. However, a steam engine could be set up anywhere, in mills, mines, and factories. They first became widely used in Great Britain, but they spread to the United States in the 19th century. The age of mechanized steam-powered travel began in 1807 with the successful voyage up the Hudson River of the Clermont, a steamboat developed by Robert Fulton. Early steamboats could travel upriver at speeds of almost 5 miles per hour. Commercially operated steamboat lines soon made round-trip shipping on the nation's great rivers both faster and cheaper. Hauling freight from Cincinnati to New York took more than 7 weeks before the days of steamboats and canals. After, it took less than 3 weeks. Railroads. Even more rapid and reliable links between cities became possible with the building of the first U.S. railroad lines in the late 1820s. The early railroads were hampered at first by safety problems, but by the 1830s, they were competing directly with canals as an alternative method for carrying passengers and freight. The combination of railroads with the other major improvements in transportation rapidly changed small western towns such as Cleveland, Cincinnati, Detroit, and Chicago into booming commercial centers of expanding national economy. These improvements in transportation linked the regions of the North and the Midwest as people in growing cities in Massachusetts and New York purchased much-needed wheat and corn raised in Ohio, Illinois, and states farther west. However, railroads were less common in the South, which continued to rely on rivers more than rails. Communication. Changes in transportation brought the country closer together, but it could travel only as fast as ships could sail and horses could run. In 1844, inventor Samuel F. B. Morse demonstrated a successful telegraph, which transmitted message along wires almost instantaneously. As wires were strung around the country, often along railroad tracks and later under oceans, for the first time in human history, people were able to communicate as fast as electricity would travel. Suddenly, managers in New York City, government officials in Washington, D.C., and military leaders in headquarters could direct people dozens, hundreds, or thousands of miles away more easily than ever before. Growth of industry. At the start of the 19th century, a manufacturing economy had barely begun in the United States. By the mid-century, however, U.S. manufacturing surpassed agriculture in value, and by century's end, it was the world's leader. This rapid industrial growth was the result of a unique combination of factors. Mechanical inventions. Protected by patent laws, inventors look forward to handsome rewards if their ideas for new tools or machines proved practical. Eli Whitney, who had developed the cotton gin in 1793, see Topic 3.12, was only the most famous of hundreds of Americans whose long hours of tinkering in their workshops resulted in improved technology. During the War of 1812, he developed a system for making rifles using interchangeable parts, identical components that can be assembled to make a final product. Before this, the parts of a rifle were not standardized enough that one could replace for another. Under Eli's system, each part could be mass-produced and then parts could be put together to make a gun. This vastly increased the efficiency of making guns and other items. Interchangeable parts then became the basis for mass production methods in the new northern factories. Corporations for raising capital. In 1811, New York passed a law that made it easier for a business to incorporate and raise capital, money, by selling shares of stock. Other states soon followed New York's lead. Owners of a corporation risked only the amount of money that they invested in a venture. They were not personally responsible for losses incurred by the corporation. Changes in state corporation laws facilitated the raising of large sums of capital necessary for building factories, canals, and railroads. Factory system. When Samuel Slater immigrated from Britain, taking information about factory designs out of the country was illegal. However, he had memorized the system and technology used in British cotton mills, and he applied these secrets to help establish the first U.S. textile factory in 1791. Early in the next century, the embargo and the War of 1812 stimulated domestic manufacturing, and the productive tariffs enacted by Congress helped the new factories prosper. In the 1820s, New England emerged as the country's leading manufacturing center as a result of the region's abundant water power for driving new machinery and excellent seaports for shipping goods. Also, the decline of New England's maritime industry made capital available for manufacturing, while the decline of farming in the region yielded a ready labor supply. Other northern states with similar resources and problems, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, followed New England's lead. As the factory system expanded, it encouraged the growth of financial businesses such as banking and insurance. Labor. At first, factory owners had difficulty finding workers for their mills. Factory life could not compete with the lure of cheap lands in the West. In response to this difficulty, textile mills in Lowell, Massachusetts, recruited young farm women and housed them in company dormitories. In the 1830s, other factories imitated the Lowell system. Many factories also made extensive use of child labor. Children as young as 7 left home to work in the new factories. Toward the middle of the century, northern manufacturers began to employ immigrants in large numbers. Unions. Trade or craft unions were organized in major cities as early as the 1790s and increased in number as factory system took hold. Many skilled workers, shoemakers and weavers, for example, had to seek employment in factories because their own small shops, the craft system, produced items that could no longer compete with low-priced, mass-produced goods. Long hours, low pay, and poor working conditions led to widespread discontent among factory workers. A prime goal of the early unions was to reduce the workday to 10 hours. The obstacles to union success, however, were many. 1. Immigrant replacement workers. 2. State laws outlawing unions. And 3. Frequent economic depressions with high unemployment. Commercial agriculture. In the early 1800s, farming became more of a commercial enterprise and less of a means of providing subsistence for the family. Several factors promoted this switch to cash crops. Large areas of western land were made available at low prices by the federal government. State banks made acquiring land easier by providing farmers with loans at low interest rates. Initially, Western farmers were limited to spending their products down the Ohio and Mississippi rivers to southern markets. Development of canals and railroads opened new markets in the growing factory cities in the east. Cotton and the South. Throughout the 19th century, the principal cash crop in the South was cotton. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin in 1793, see topic 3.12, transformed the agriculture of an entire region. Now that they could easily separate the cotton fiber from the seeds, Southern planters found cotton more profitable than tobacco and indigo, the leading crops of the colonial period. They invested their capital in the purchase of enslaved African Americans and new land in Alabama and Mississippi. See topic 4.13. The cotton industry connected the South with the global economy. Mills in New England and Europe depended on cotton grown by enslaved workers in the South. Shipping firms, banks, and insurance companies based in the North, particularly in New York City, prospered through their roles in the transfer of cotton. Further, in order to devote all of their land to growing cotton, many plantation owners purchased pork, corn, and other food from states in the Midwest. Key terms by theme. Industry. Lancaster Turnpike. National Cumberland Road. John Deere. Cyrus McCormick. Erie Canal. Robert Fulton, steamboats. Railroads. Telegraph. Eli Whitney, interchangeable parts. Corporations. Samuel Slater. Factory system. Lowell system. Textile mills. Unions. Cotton gin. Market revolution. Identities. Old Northwest.